Missiles continue to rain down on Ukrainian cities on what is now the 13th day of invasion, and Ukraine will now attempt to evacuate civilians from 5 of the hardest hit cities under a humanitarian corridor agreed upon with Russia. All this comes after a similar ceasefire agreement on Monday failed spectacularly, and Ukraine then accused Russia of shelling the passages civilians were supposed to use to flee these passages. In the latest coming in, the Russian Defense Ministry confirmed the opening of humanitarian corridors so that civilians can evacuate from the cities of Kyiv, Chernihiv, Sumy, Kharkiv and Mariupol. All of those have witnessed Russian shelling in recent days. Ukraine too has confirmed the evacuation of civilians from Sumy heading south to the city of Poltava today. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky had accused Moscow earlier of hampering evacuation efforts by mining roads and destroying buses after Russia had proposed the creation of similar corridors on Monday. But Ukraine refused to evacuate its civilians as 4 of Moscow's 6 proposed corridors led straight to either Russia or its strong ally, that is Belarus.
Коридори. Чи спрацювала вона? Замість неї спрацювали російські танки, російські гради, російські міни. Вони навіть замінували дорогу, яку погоджували для підвезення продуктів і ліків для людей, для дітей.
The carnage, however, continued across the country. 9 people were killed in Sumy due to Russian airstrikes or an apartment building. 13 people were killed in a shelling on an industrial bakery in the town of Marakiv. And the mayor of Gossamel was killed after delivering bread to civilians. All this comes after multiple attempts to evacuate over the weekend, and all these attempts were swiftly abandoned when civilians trying to reach safety came under fire. Now, for the latest of what's happening on ground, we still have Dr. Lada El-Roslikhi, who is the founder of the Black Trident Defense and Security Consulting Group. Doctor, thank you so much for staying on this broadcast. My next question to you involves the recent developments on ground. From what we hear, and the reports are saying that Russia has made a new offer for evacuation, saying that Ukrainians can choose where they want to be evacuated to. What do you make of Russia's new offer?
Well, who is Russia to be deciding where Ukrainian citizens have a right to flee to? That is my question. This is another violation of international law, not only human law, but also civil and political laws. It's completely ridiculous. Ukrainians don't want to be in Russia. They want to be at home in Ukraine, myself included. So who is Russia? And why is Russia being allowed to get away with so much is a very good question. And we're very happy to and hopeful that the International Court of Justice, which has had now an appeal made yesterday to consider Russia as violating the Genocide Convention. This is a decision that we're really waiting for, to have some sort of preliminary motions taken against Russia to stop it, stop the violence. People, children, old people, everybody is dying and they're hungry. And imagine 3 weeks ago, everybody was at home, like having a pretty nice time, apart from the fact that the Russian army was surrounding us and everybody was thinking, oh, nothing is going to happen. Well, it's happening and it has to be stopped. It has to be stopped, and it can be stopped.
Absolutely. Dr. Roslikhi, I want to ask you about the impact of the Western blowback against Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We've heard of sanctions. We've heard of the threat of cutting off Russian gas to the rest of the world. And we're feeling the impact of it as we speak. Russia has threatened to cut off its main gas to Europe through the Nord Stream 1 pipeline. Will this be effective, in a sense, to punish the world economy for what it has done to Russia?
Well, the funny thing is that the Russian Federation is extremely dependent on its energy and natural resources. It doesn't develop anything. It's not a manufacturing country. It doesn't have IT or an industry that can feed it. So by blocking sales to their major off-takers, it's actually killing itself, which is helpful to the people who want peace on the planet. That having been said, of course, we're going to be looking at rising rising energy prices. We've seen that the United States is now turning to consult with Venezuela in reference to the oil, crude oil. So we do have alternative sources of oil. And I think it's actually good to remind Western countries as well as the global society as a whole that we need to be a little bit more interdependent, because creating major dependencies such as India has in certain industries with the Russian Federation is not safe for our national sovereignty. So there has to be a better balance between national security, international cooperation, and globalization as we would like to see it in the future. So this is a good time to make lessons, to learn lessons.
Absolutely. Now, we've heard the Ukrainian President Zelensky appeal one time too many for military intervention, for membership to NATO, for some kind of assistance beyond sanctions. That has been sort of the arsenal, the weapon in the West's arsenal against Russia so far. But none of it has been delivered to Ukraine so far. What does Ukraine need at this point to fight Russian aggression?
Well, Ukraine has received, let us be reminded, from its partner countries, not only NATO member countries, anti-tank missiles, anti-rocket missiles. We're really in need of flak jackets, so bulletproof Kevlar vests, helmets, because citizens are being are going to fight on the streets, and they're fighting armed, trained Russians with literally their bare hands with no cover. From the perspective of NATO, this is a narrative that I believe is really passé, and we should be stepping away from this NATO concept. I mean, every country has a sovereign right to use its armed forces in a manner in which it sees fit. So we can, I'm a proponent of the creation of a coalition of countries as broad as potentially even India, but Israel, Kuwait, Qatar, plus Western European countries, maybe even Tunisia, who can cooperate together to at least establish a no-fly zone. And the no-fly zone is covering the air, but it does not mean that people have to die with a no-fly zone. There's technology nowadays that jams the airspace, so an airplane can't get into that territory, or a drone will be jammed over that territory. And in order to achieve this huge bit of diplomatic deterrence, it requires cooperation from countries. I mean, let's face it, NATO, to get 30 countries to agree on a single policy has been shown to be proven difficult for the last 5 years.
Absolutely. Dr. Roliski, thank you so much for joining us on WION at this point, and thank you so much for all your insights into the Ukraine conflict at this point. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.